Hey, what up, college football fans? The College Ball Show is back. And I'll tell you what, wow, what a freaking weekend we had in college football. Obviously, week three. This will be just a quick recap of week three. Later in the week, I'll have my week four predictions, preview some games. A lot going on, no doubt about it. A lot of big matchups coming up this next week. But we're gonna focus on what happened this last Saturday. Whole lot of things happened, right? We had a fair amount of ranked teams against ranked teams. Some of them lived up to the hype and delivered a great game, like Alabama Ole Miss. Others didn't live up to the hype. In fact, some programs, like Louisville, sent a about as strong as message as you can send, going head up. At that time, FSU was ranked second in the nation. Louisville was 10th. They just completely stomped them. There was also plenty of upsets across the ranked landscape, no doubt about it. Texas went down in a great game. Iowa got upset as well. Oregon got upset as well. So we're gonna kind of get all over the place when it comes to that. But let's start, shall we, by talking about Louisville. Louisville is a team that I should say a program that a handful of years ago was definitely on the up and up, right? Definitely on the up and up. Charlie Strong built up that team, and they did really well, right? He left a little while back, what, 2 years ago, and they got their old coach who was there mid 2000s. And last year you could see signs. Seemed like the defense improved. You could just see some signs. You could see something going on there, no doubt about it. I remember that Florida State game. Maybe that was 2 years ago yeah, it was 2 years ago where they jumped all over them and then let them come back. So they've been trying to make strides, and they sure have this season. Lamar Jackson in this game finished with 146 yards rushing and four TDs, and also passed for two TD touchdowns, excuse me, and I think it was 200 some odd yards for passing. And Florida State was outgained overall 530 to 284. In the rushing yards, 314. It was the most points allowed in Florida State Seminole history. Now, the Cardinals just came right out and just marched right down the field with ease, right? Got up pretty early. Um, but Florida State managed to close the gap. This was still early in the game, of course, but they closed it. I think it was 14-10, right? But but the defense stepped up, started applying pressure to Francois, the young Seminole quarterback, and like I said, the run game just took over. In Florida State, they look like crap in the first half, or at least most of the first half of the opening weekend against Ole Miss, of course. But wow, they look great at the end of that first half and all of the second half, right? So, um, what's this mean? Maybe Florida State isn't as good as we think, or thought, I should say, right? With the preseason rankings and just the rankings going into that game second. Um, or Louisville's just that damn good. They jumped up, I believe, to number three. And you can make an argument, that they could be number one. I know Bama, um, just got a quality win in a back and forth game that Florida State beat them to. And I guess you could say in a similar game, right? Because they were down both. And let's talk about that. Alabama, they got down. Mississippi came right out on like a 7-play, 75-yard drive, like in a minute. Just boom, hey, there you go, right? But Bama responded with their own 16-play drive. They did have to settle for a field goal due to an overthrow by that young quarterback. And for a chunk of the game, when they were down, I think they got down by 19. Alabama was just facing a bunch of long yardage situations on second and third down. And like I said, for most of that first half, it was 24-3 after Yvonne Ingram scored a long TD pass, and there was a defensive scoop and score. 24-3, just like that. So it was a 21-point deficit, not 19. But just like Florida State closed well and then really took over in the second half, this was a little different because Alabama made a run scoring back-to-back touchdowns. There was an 85-yard punt return for a touchdown. So 24-17 at the break. And Crimson Tide sacked Kelly right away, forcing a fumble, tied the game, and then I think it was 27-27, and pretty much it was all the Tide after that for quite some time. Now, Ole Miss, to their credit, they got back in the game. They definitely got back in the game, rallied, no doubt about it. But really, the fourth quarter, Alabama, relied on their two-man rushing game between Damian Harris and also Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, man, he's really he's a nice weapon. He's starting to be able to pass the ball, but his run capability is really interesting to me. Fairly big upset in the college football landscape. Iowa, who had, only lost once last year, or was it twice? Did they lose their bowl game? I can't remember. But anyway, North Dakota State gets it done 23-21. They literally needed every single second of this 60-minute contest. They hit a field goal to win it, and a nice 29-yard run by Easton Stick, the quarterback. And, I was really impressed. They actually went for it on they actually got 21-20, and they went for the 2-point conversion. They failed it, ended up getting the ball back because their defensive held pretty damn good. And it was really impressive. It was very impressive. On the college ball podcast, we talked about this game. A buddy of mine went to NDSU the last couple of years as he was finishing up his degree, and he said, hey, watch out for this. You know what I mean? Iowa literally, total yards, Iowa only got 231 total yards. And North Dakota, run game heavy, 239. Time in possession, 36-40 to 23-20. It was a hell of a game, and I think that's 6 times now that they've managed to go on the road against a Power 5 and get it done. So big shots out to North Dakota State. If you're a hardcore college football fan, you already know them, right? Now, Michigan, they were ranked 4th going against Colorado, and they got down. It was 14-0. I think it was 21-7. Michigan had outgained, was outgained 175-65 in the first quarter. And, in the second and third quarters, they kind of traded scores. But finally, Michigan really pulled away, ended up getting it done against Colorado 45-28. A key stat for Colorado was 1 for 13 on third downs. And Michigan got it done, but man, it was pretty close. Not going to lie, it's pretty close. Not sure when I did that on Friday when I talked about, I think I did my predictions on Friday. That's what it was. Because that Houston-Cincinnati game actually turned out to be a fun game. Like I mentioned, it was probably the closest 40-16 game you'll ever see. And it sounds funny just saying that. It definitely does. But it's true, man. It is very true. It's probably the closest game you're getting. The last 7 minutes of that game, Houston just pulled away, man. It was pretty interesting. Now, Ohio State came out and just looked great. They looked phenomenal. Oklahoma, to their credit, hung around a little bit to try to make it interesting, but that just wasn't going to be the case. I think Joe Mixon returned a 97-yard kickoff that made it 14-7. So it kept them around. I think it was 35-17 at half. J.T. Barrett passing, running, doing all sorts of stuff. They look great at the wide receiver position. They look like they got some guys that can just go up and get it. Is basically what it looked like. I mentioned the Texas-California. Cal came out, got up 7-zip. Texas rallied back, got it to 17-7. Then they just went back and forth with the touchdowns. Texas was up 33-28 for a little bit there. I think that was the halftime score, if I'm not. Yeah, I think so. But Texas got up 35-33, and then it was just a barn burner from thereafter. They ended up, finishing it off. Cal, to their credit, they ended up winning the game 50-43. And so Texas goes on the road, loses. It's not the end of the world. I didn't think Texas was all the way back. But it's really weird this year. They can put up points, which is something they couldn't really do last year, but they can't stop anybody, which is really surprising with the Charlie Strong defense. Now, I'm pretty sure that I know that a couple of key parts right away were kicked out when he first got there. But he's had some time to recruit and bring guys in, whether it's JUCO or transfers or, freshmen. But it could be the case where his defense is so different than what was there, so it's taken a while. But I'm pretty surprised. That's kind of I'm not surprised that Texas lost completely, right? Because it was a really competitive game. But I don't know, man. It's really weird that that their defense is just real lackluster right now. So we'll keep an eye on that. But big win for Cal, no doubt about it. Georgia Southern almost beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin in September and overall tends to grind out games, field position, defense, make a big play here and there, whichever side of the ball. They were waiting too long. They got down in the fourth quarter. They did manage to get it done 23-17. They were 9th in the nation. They dropped out of the top 10 because of that poor performance. Christian McCaffrey, all-purpose guy, right? This guy's just a stat stuffer. He had a big game, no doubt about it. In fact, let me get his stats. 30 rushes for $165, 73 receiving touchdown receiving yards, I should say. It's his 8th straight game with 200 all-purpose yards. So, wow. Unbelievable. Really just unbelievable, man. And so, yeah, they took care of USC like it was really no problem at all. Looking across the landscape, Tennessee had a competitive game against Iowa, but clearly beat them. Texas A&M picked up a big win on the road at Auburn. I spoke of the habit, right, that they were getting into, getting a big win the last two early weeks. Usually I think it was the first or second week. The last 2 years, Texas A&M has come out like gangbusters, and then kind of shriveled up and didn't really do what it looked like they were capable of. Well, they got a big win, and that's key. That's really key for them. A lot of confidence there. Mizzou almost got by Georgia. And once again, Georgia just got by another week. Last week it was Nichols, a university I hadn't even heard of. But they got it. They got it, man. 28-27. The quarterback Eaton is definitely starting to get comfortable, especially with McKenzie. We'll keep an eye on them. Another upset across there, though, Oregon, which I just don't know what to think of them this year. They look good, early on here, and they look good actually early on in this game. The first couple of weeks I thought they played pretty well, but Nebraska just hung around, ended up getting it 35-32. Big win for Nebraska, and they're unbeaten. We'll see how they'll do here. LSU gets a tight win at home, 23-20 over Mississippi State. Another big game, Notre Dame and Michigan State, and there was a lot of unknown with Michigan State. Well, we know more about O'Connor, their quarterback, playing pretty good, but their three-headed monster at the running game produced. Now, sometimes it'll be L.J. Scott getting 100 yards. Sometimes it'll be the other guys. Maybe it'll just be a variety so they can, maybe not one guy gets 100 yards, but there'll be a guy with 58 and 80 and 60, whatever. They look pretty damn good. Actually, what am I saying? They looked freaking phenomenal, but because they got a lead like 36-8 or something like that. But they did let Notre Dame get back. Kaiser definitely rallied the troops, but they came up short, 36-28. So Notre Dame already has two losses on the I was going to say on the docket, but they already got two losses so far. So and it's not like the schedule is going to get much easier, right? So big win for Michigan State. Obviously, they should shore up some of the issues, but I think they're going to be pretty good. Obviously, Dan Antonio is a guy that like I said, run the ball and play defense, and gets makes some plays throughout the game, much like Wisconsin actually. One of the best games of the week was Oklahoma State, who was coming off that controversial ending against Central Michigan, right? A play that shouldn't have happened, but it did, and they shouldn't have, probably been in the game with Central Michigan, or at least give up that play anyway. It was a Hail Mary lateral that got it done with no time on the clock. But anyway, this guy Washington, wide receiver for Oklahoma State, man. This guy, first play from scrimmage, 91 yards. These guys just back and forth. Oklahoma State did get up, I think 24-10, but then Pitt came storming back. And speaking of storm, there was a lightning storm in the area, so they had to stop. At 38-38, they had to stop. They had to shut down for quite some time and just be on kind of being a holding trend, right? Just kind of waiting. They did get back on the field and finish it. Oklahoma State did beat Pittsburgh, but a fun game. That was a great game. And look at this Washington. Look at these numbers. Okay, first of all, the quarterback, Rudolph, right? He threw it for a school record 540 yards and a lot of touchdowns, right? And Washington had 9 catches for 296 and 2 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, Childs had 10 rushes for $107 and 4 touchdowns. So that offense, as we know, is freaking good, man. It is really, really good, dude. Another stat stuffer from East Carolina. This wasn't a loss to South Carolina, but Zay Jones, a wide receiver for East Carolina, the Pirates, 22 receptions for 190 yards. That's pretty damn impressive, if you ask me. That about wraps it up. Like I said, next week we got plenty to talk about. By the way, Miami looked pretty damn good against Appalachian State. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, Appalachian State. Well, yeah. Well, did you see the Tennessee game? Appalachian State is not a bad squad, so it'd be interesting to see what Mark Richt can do here with Miami. ASU and was it San Antonio? University of Texas San Antonio. That was a hell of a game, too, 32-28. There were some late West Coast games that were fun. That UCLA BYU that actually turned into to a pretty damn good game, in my opinion. What was the final on that one? Let me check real quick. 17-14. So they just barely got by. What other games have we got that were close before I get out of here? Well, Well, that South Carolina East Carolina game was pretty damn tight too. Yeah, that about wraps it up. You can give me a follow at Rope-A-Dope Radio. Of course, the Rope-A-Dope Report here in the College Ball Show. We do a full-length Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast and a college football podcast at blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. And also Rope-A-Dope Radio is available on iTunes, both of those, the college football and the boxing. Anyway, you guys take it easy. I'll be back later this week to do my week 4 picks. Peace.